Are you holding on in the fantasy football playoffs? If so, congratulations. This time on the Fantasy G.O.A.T, the panel is helping you get to the promised land. Last effort tips, tricks, and all the good stuff so you can secure your fantasy football title. Let's go. The Fantasy G.O.A.T starts right now.
Who starts? Who sits? And how to become the greatest of all time. This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T, sponsored by La Bonita Supermarkets.
Hello and welcome. This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T. I'm your host, Mike Davis. Thanks so much for joining me. Today on the show, we have a very exciting panel. We got Cruzen with Full-Time Fantasy and Sports Illustrated, as well as Dr. Nithin Natwa, all the way from Chicago, at Fantasy Docs on social media, a must-follow. Plus, our third guest, I'm very happy to say, is my producer, James Edward Barrickman IV. James, great to have you with us. You're going to be giving us some great fantasy tips as well. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a guy who played Kyle Pitts last week and Puka Nacua this week. So he's got a lot of good advice for us to share. But Sean, let's kick it off with you because right now you are killing it in the Full-Time Fantasy High Stakes League for Circa. We're going to get to advice right now from everybody, but how about you kick us off, because how many teams do you have in the lead right now for that 150K?
You know, I'm blown away as well, but it goes to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. That's what we're here, and this is what we do. I'm in first, second, fifth, and seventh overall for the 150,000. So I have four of the top 7 teams. It's
pretty insane, but also give a shout out to Jason Feinberg, because what is he's on vacation right now, but what else is he doing?
Hey, our good buddy Jason, he's nipping at my heels. His name is Angry Cats, and he's in third place overall. So Jason and I have the 3 top teams in the $150,000.
Oh my God. All I know is, Sean, you're treating us to dinner once you win that, baby. But tell everybody at home some advice, okay? Because right now it's the time where we need the tips. It's the time where we need the tricks. What's some general advice you can give us right now as we're in the fantasy football playoffs?
You know, and we've touched on this in the past. This is not the time to get cute. This is not the time to start putting in players that, you know, that aren't in your lineup. Stick to what got you there, as I've been saying. So,
I mean, yesterday we saw a tremendous Thursday night football game. Jason Feinberg ends up not playing Matthew Stafford, a guy who took him to almost to the promised land, and do you think he got too cute?
That would be called getting cute. You know, now to Jason's credit, Stafford on all the ranking services was down as a QB2 this week, ranked 17.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he'd be in the lead right now. But he also has Lamar Jackson. If you looked at the rankings this week, Lamar was ranked 3rd or 4th overall. So if you go strictly by the rankings, Jason made the right call. But as I had told people last week, I had taken Kyle Pitts and put him in everywhere, even though Harold Fannin, his backup on my teams, was ranked much higher. I stuck to my plan.
Okay, so you're saying don't get cute, stick to your guns, stick to your plan, stick to the system that got you there. Dr. Natwa in Chicago, tell us, what have you been thinking about, ruminating on as we're in the fantasy playoffs right now? What are some of those tips and tricks you have for our good fans at home?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sean, and that's impressive. He's one of those players that's lining up all the slots in the record book. So I'm hoping that it works out for him in regards to that. But yeah, just playing your studs, not getting cute. I mean, with Stafford, the rankings are one thing, but Stafford's also one of the favorites for the MVP award. So, I mean, with the tear he's been going on, I would be riding him out throughout the rest of the season, especially next week as well. But yeah, I mean, what I'm doing is I'm just keeping an eye on what I'm good at, and that's kind of doing the injury assessments and making sure that if I do see a player that's playing, like Josh Jacobs is a good example. He's trending for doubtful right now, apparently. But if he's active, regardless of how he's practiced this week, I'm starting him because he's been practicing injured all season, and he's been putting up yards and touchdowns. So it's just important to kind of take into account. Just because a player is injured doesn't mean they're not a really good start.
Yeah, and speaking of up to the minute advice that you always give to people online at Fantasy Docs on social, make sure you follow Dr. Natwa. Doctor, you had made a post about a week or two ago, right after the initial Davante Adams injury. Of course, he didn't go on Thursday Night Football, but you kind of had the impression that it seemed like he was going to be out for quite a bit. Do you think this is a guy who could come back and actually play in the Fantasy Football Championship next week for certain managers?
That's a really good point. And with that, that's kind of where you take into account the kind of injury that's being suffered. So with Davante, I think that maybe they'll force him back a little bit earlier, but you have to take into account hamstrings. Their grade ones are usually a minimum 2 to 3 weeks. So Davante coming back next week would be earlier than that timeline. Then you have to take to account his age. And I'm saying this as a 38-year-old man. He's old for an NFL wide receiver. So it's someone that I wouldn't really be trusting in that slot, even though he'll be a red zone threat. I mean, say he catches 2 TDs for 2 yards apiece. Is that what you're looking for? And I think that's the best case scenario for him playing, but I don't think he'll be playing.
Last question for you, just as we're wrapping up some injury stuff. I saw Rashee Rice is out, which is good, so we don't have to deal with that decision on Sunday. But Rome Odunze, I mean, this is a guy last week. Some people probably could have got tripped up in their leagues because he was a late scratch. Would you trust him and play him in any scenario?
No, and if you'd been following me, you wouldn't have been tripped up because you just would have thought that he's out for the season as well. Because he has what they call a stress fracture, not a stress reaction. They labeled it a stress fracture. A stress reaction is the earlier phase of a stress fracture where you don't see a fracture line, but you just see inflammation. And even that's kind of a 1 to 2 week thing. If it truly is a stress fracture, like they said, there's like no chance of him playing because that's something where you can worsen the fracture and it's about a 4 to 6 week recovery. So I'm thinking that they probably mislabeled it as probably a stress reaction. Even if it's that, though, he's going to be playing limited. So if for some reason he's playing next week, I think he's a huge risk, and I wouldn't be putting that risk in for my championship week.
Okay. All right. Good stuff to know. Coming up, who's the league winner you guys are riding high, and perhaps the potential league loser? I want to know all those things from our panel next.
You're watching the Fantasy Go, sponsored by La Bonita Supermarkets.
All right, welcome back to the Fantasy Go. So I want to know the league winners and losers as we're rounding out the season. Dr. Natwa, give us both of those. Who are some of your league winners and losers as you're reflecting on the season?
I think winners, it's kind of easy. CMC and JSN, those triple initials, they hit it out of the park, and they were both players that I think a lot of people were down on, whether for injury concerns or for just schematics and the type of offense that they were in. And they're both top leaderboards of their positions. So if you pick them and you're not in the playoffs, something must have gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, a lot of league winners, a lot of guys in the playoffs had those names on it. I saw a lot of lists also had Michael Wilson. So those have been a lot of the names around for that. Sean, what about you, league winners wise, before we go to losers? Tell us about some of the league winners that you just have consistently thought about, and just maybe they're a common thread in a lot of the high stakes leagues.
Yeah, and that's a great point. What we do is we have an ownership tool that we can see who other players are playing, and that determines how you set up your teams, right? So to the doctor's point, JSN has been absolutely a league winner, could probably be a championship winner for you. Puka Nacua, we saw what he did last night, 46.5 fantasy points. Those are the kind of performances you're going to need from explosive players to win your fantasy championship. Michael Wilson, he did nothing the first half of the year. Since the Marvin Harrison injury, he's been one of the top 5 wide receivers. He's actually the 4th overall owned wide receiver in the Fantasy Football World Championships, which is surprising.
Wow.
Because a lot of people didn't even own him, out of the draft. So
I think it's strange seeing him there, and it's also weird because I think the dynamic of, the JSNs and the Puka Nakuas, they're coming from one side of the coin, which is these teams are hot that they're playing for. They're in good offenses. They're competing at the league level and at the fantasy level. And then you have the Michael Wilson where it's just garbage points.
Right.
It's Jacoby Brissett in Arizona, not really competing for anything, but they're just playing from behind so much that they're gathering garbage points.
Absolutely.
So do you think it's good to have a fair mix of both? Or as you're getting into week 16, 17, what do? Do you lean more on teams that are good, or do you lean maybe on some teams that are going to be playing from behind and there's garbage time and garbage points on the line?
It's a combo. It's definitely a combo. And one of the things, all you fantasy viewers out there, you have to get on Fantasy Docs. The doctor knows what he's talking about. He's a world-class doctor. He gives you great advice. The fact, if you go and start Jacobs and he doesn't play, that's going to crush you.
Yeah.
So you've got to really pay attention to what the doctor's talking about. So making sure that your players are healthy is a big thing. We've talked about this in the past. Trends are trends. Michael Wilson's been on a tear. If Marvin Harrison is out, he is a must start. So those are the difference makers in the garbage quarter, the players that are playing from behind, like Jacoby Brissett. Even Tyler Shuck has had a pretty good run for a rookie because New Orleans is always behind.
Yeah, New Orleans is always playing from
Yep.
behind. Producer James, let's bring you in the mix here. What about for you? Some league winners. Who have you been riding high all season long?
So, I'm with you guys 100%, Sean, Dr. Natwa. You can't talk about league winners, I think, without talking about Puka Nacua, given where he was drafted. He wasn't the number 1 or 2 receiver, if I remember correctly, in those drafts. He was kind of going mid to late first, and we're seeing the production that he's putting out. So I think Puka would be my number 1, but I also don't think you can talk about league winners and not talk about Rico Dowdle, who's kind of cooled off a little bit over the last 3 weeks, but man, he's got to be a guy that has gotten a lot of teams to the playoffs. I don't even know where he was going in the drafts, but he's been, a very, very pleasant surprise for a lot of teams that didn't think they were going to get anything out of him.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard, he was the guy that a lot of people were taking and thinking was going to be dominating that backfield. Real quickly, James, as we're trying to round out this segment and talk league losers a little bit, do you have a guy that just disaster-wise was a league loser and tanked one of your teams?
Nobody that really, really sticks out. You think about Saquon, he's kind of been a bit of a disappointment given the year he had last year. The name that I want to bring up, and he hasn't been horrible, but Roma Doomsday. And granted, I didn't have the highest of expectations for him coming into the season, but he started out kind of hot, and then you see some of these performances as of late, a 0, a 17, 5.1, 6.8, 1.8. And I don't know if you guys have ever saw this before, but round 1 of the playoffs last week, you see Jay Glazer on TV. He's talking about Roma Doomsday's in. He's good to go against Cleveland. 5 minutes before kick, they rule him out.
Yeah.
And I'm playing for last place, but a lot of people probably had him in first place games, or in rather playoff games. Have you guys ever seen that before? Where 5 minutes before kick, they rule a player out after they said he was good to go?
Well, they said, let's go to Dr. Natwa. It looked like he re-aggravated everything minutes before kickoff. Is that the truth, you think?
Yeah, he probably was showing reduced inflammation on imaging, and he was able to tolerate running and all of that, and then probably just hit his foot wrong, and then got just a pain burst there. And that's the thing that I would imagine. I can't imagine that they would be doing anything else untoward. I think that he was probably trending in a good direction. It was getting to the point where they thought the game was important enough, and he tried to play through it and wasn't able to. I did want to say real quickly, though, we were talking about Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Today, Marvin Harrison Jr. logged full amount of practice reps, so I think that really does impact your ability to start Wilson this upcoming week.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. I know myself, I probably will never draft Marvin Harrison again. I've gotten too much of him in the past 2 years, and I just cannot see myself biting that bullet again. But guys, coming up after a short break, we got More Fantasy GOAT plus a little La Bonita. Stick with us. All right, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. This week, our Commissioner's Choice of the Week goes to Puka Nacua. The LA wide receiver had a monster game on Thursday Night Football with 12 catches, 225 yards, and 2 touchdowns for a total of 46.5 points. And now, for the Commissioner's Choice of the Week from La Bonita, let's go shopping. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, guys. Mike Davis here at La Bonita in Green Valley with my buddy Armando. Armando, listen, it's getting colder outside. It's the holiday season. We're craving tamales. We're craving all those comfort foods like hot chocolate. But you guys do a hot chocolate that you say is hot chocolate on steroids. It's called Champurrado. Tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, you got it right. This is a hot chocolate on steroids. This is very popular in Mexico. It's called Champurrado, like you said. But this has chocolate, it has milk, the regular ingredients, but we add corn masa, and that's the corn dough that we use to make tortillas. So that's included in there. This has cane sugar, and then it has some cinnamon. So it has a lot of more ingredients than just your traditional hot chocolate. That's what gives it the thickness, is from that corn masa.
You could see the thickness, and it even smells, guys, like almost like those pumpkin spice lattes, those PSLs that we all love. It's perfect for the holiday season. So this pairs great, of course, with tamales. You got the chicken, you got the pork, you got the cheese. You got to do that, but I think we got to take a sip of this, okay? Let's try this. Cheers.
Salud.
Oh my God. My sore throat is gone. That is what you want. The chocolate, the cinnamon, the masa, the thickness. This is gonna warm you up. This is gonna warm your family up for the holiday season. Merry Christmas, Armando. Great to be with you guys. Pair it with the tamales. You can't go wrong with the Champurrado during the holiday season. Merry Christmas. Wow.
You're watching the Fantasy GOAT, sponsored by La Bonita Supermarkets.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Fantasy GOAT. Mike Davis with you. So Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville balled out last week, but do we still believe in him and the guys on that roster? I'm talking the Etiennes, the Brian Thomas Jr.'s, the Jacoby Myers, all those guys, especially because they play Denver this week. So to me, it's a little iffy. Sean, how do you make sense of Jacksonville right now? Because I would be terrified to depend on a guy like Trevor Lawrence come fantasy playoff time, championship time, semifinal time. So how are you making sense of this?
Rightfully so, to be terrified. Every time we've ever relied on Trevor Lawrence, he generally lets us down. Now, to that point, last week, he was the highest scoring quarterback of the week. So they're humming on all cylinders. It's taken them a couple months to learn Liam Cohen's system. They're right there in the playoff race. They've looked great in their last, 6 games. For me, I still don't trust a week in, week out performance from Lawrence or Brian Thomas Jr., who everybody drafted in the first round. The must-start players on Jacksonville are Etienne, who's taken his game this year to a whole nother level. He's pass catching, he's running, he's a 3-down back. He's really who you want from that team in your lineup, as well as the former Las Vegas player, Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
It took him a couple weeks to learn the system, but now that he understands his role, to me, he is the number one receiver in Jacksonville. If you have Jacoby Myers, as I do on some teams, I'm starting him everywhere I have him.
Wow. Yeah, and he's just signed a new contract. It's evident that, he likes being there. They like having him there. Natwa, what do you think, Doctor, about Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, Sean's right on. You got to trust the players that have been consistent throughout the season. And the two there are Jacoby and Etienne. And they've consistently put up numbers. They might have had some duds here and there, but overall they've been consistent. So consistent players with the team on an upswing, I think that's gold right there. But also, I'm not going for the 1 week BTJ. I'm not just going to take a huge risk on my entire championship just to put that guy in. And we talked about before, are you going to be upset about the decision that you make after it goes badly? And if I put in BTJ and he puts up a goose egg, I'm gonna go ballistic.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. You got to be able to live with yourself. All right, guys. Coming up after a short break, we're talking two guys: Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Would you trust them come championship time? That's next.
You're watching the Fantasy GOAT, Sponsored by La Bonita Supermarkets.
All right, so last thing here, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, two of the most consistent fantasy football players of the past few years, but this season, it's been anything but. So I want to know, if you got them, do you play them? Dr. Natwa, what would you do? Would you trust either one of those guys in the semifinals, the finals of your fantasy football league?
Well, like I said before, I'm taking Stafford over both of them, which is an insane statement to think about making in the preseason. But if you're talking about head-to-head, I'd be going Burrow just because Lamar hasn't really done much these past couple weeks. And I know Burrow put up, I mean, they got shut out last week. I just got to imagine he bounces back. So he did really well the week before that, threw 4 touchdowns. And if I'm picking between Jackson and Burrow, I'm going to go with the guy that put up 1 dud, but has been pretty constant since coming back, versus the guy who's known for stellar games, but really has been lackluster the past 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, it almost seems like Burrow last week, it was more like mental or emotional, something going on there. So it's strange, but I agree with Dr. Natwa. Sean Cruzen, tell us, what would you do? Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow? Would you trust him in these last 2 weeks?
It's a toss-up for me, really, but to the doctor's point, I have Stafford, as everyone who watches this show knows, across all my teams. And I went against my own advice, where I was telling you not to get cute and things like that. And I actually started Lamar or Burrow over Stafford in a couple leagues. In my top teams, I still have Stafford on those, but for me this week, I'm going to go right with what the doctor said. I trust Joe Burrow much more than I trust Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Lamar's averaged 14.7 points this year, which is not going to get you to the fantasy championship. We also, this is a reason you need to look at fantasy docs, because I need to know if T. Higgins is going to be in there. Then the decision becomes very easy. You start Joe Burrow. We have them ranked both at Sports Illustrated and at Full Time Fantasy in the top 5.
Okay.
I go Burrow here.
All right, there you go. A lot of great advice. We wish you all the best of luck in your fantasy leagues. Thank you, the doctor, Nithin Natwa at Fantasy Docs, Sean Cruzen, and producer James. I'm Mike Davis. We're wishing you the best of luck in this last couple weeks of the fantasy football season. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, and Merry Christmas.